Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I am the head coach at Grace Financial Coaching. And welcome to 1 year of Lessons Learned. This is our 364th day of episodes. Tomorrow
Awesome.
will be our 1 year anniversary, and we are so excited to welcome Olivia Connell today. Olivia is a tutor by trade. She was actually a former public school teacher, and she specializes in language. Olivia works with students in 1st through 5th grade, helping them build the foundational skills they need to achieve academic success. And I am so excited to hear about the dumb things she's done with money. How are you, Olivia?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing, Suzanne?
Awesome. So happy to have you today. So let's first talk about your career as a public school teacher and how you got into full-time tutoring.
Yeah, so I was teaching. I've taught 1st and 2nd grade, so definitely those grades where students learn how to read. And over the course of the pandemic and everything, there were a lot of gaps that were happening. And my students, I just noticed they were really struggling with reading, particularly after being virtual. It was very difficult for these students to learn how to read. So when I was really struggling with, how to help my students and things like that, I actually decided to become a tutor. And I really feel like I've been able to help a lot of students learn how to read and in other subjects as well. And I help them with math and things like that.
The reading is just, it's the baseline for everything else, is it not?
Exactly. So it's really fulfilling to know that, I'm helping these students read, and that's going to impact their future education as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't just impact the 1st grade, the 2nd grade, and then the 3rd grade and the 4th grade, right? I mean, years and years and years ago, I remember a study coming out that the number one thing you can do for your kid academically is read to them.
Yeah,
You can
definitely.
be horrific at math, never learn how to do fractions yourself, never take algebra, but if you read to your kid, it is the most impactful thing. Do you think that is still accurate?
Definitely. And the reason why it's still important to read out loud to your kids, which a lot of people just don't do, maybe they feel awkward about it, like with their older kids, but it's really important for them to hear fluent readers, like being able to hear like what it sounds like to read fluently instead of kind of like that robotic reading that they start out doing where they're just reading each individual word. It's really important for them to also know that like their parents value reading. And so even though it might feel kind of awkward reading out loud like to your older kids, I think that it's actually really important because like and that's important family time too. So I think that's a good thing to do.
Definitely. It's going to impact everything moving forward. I mean, even to this day, I remember being at a networking meeting pre-COVID, right? So everyone was in the room, no masks. And I'm standing up there and I was reading off of a piece of paper because I had to give a certain amount of information. And 3 or 4 people came up to me afterwards and they're like, "You read so well." And my mother's gone now, but she was a librarian. And so she was always huge into the book. So every time I see my nieces and nephews, I always make sure to be reading to them for sure.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned obviously COVID. We're recording this in July of 2022. What do you think, besides from the reading out loud with your kids to your kids, is there anything else we can do to kind of counteract the negative effects of virtual schooling? I understand that the people who put that into place were trying to keep the school year going to the best of their abilities. We're looking back now and we're saying, oh, that might not have been such a great idea because these effects are much worse than we thought they were going to be. Is there anything else that you would say as a teacher that you would say, okay, let's read out loud, let's read together, and let's do this to try to counteract those negative effects?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's summertime right now. So, kids want to be doing things that are fun and they don't necessarily want to be sitting like inside doing something that's boring schoolwork. But like anytime you can make like a game out of certain things. I think that's a great way to even just like connect with your kid, and even playing like board games and things like that. I think that that's like a really quality thing that you can do with kids. Just, and there's so many skills, so many board games cover different skills that especially younger kids need to learn. But yeah, also obviously finding the specific skills that your child may be missing. And if you need help with that, obviously hiring a tutor can help with that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think people forget that the reason we have summer break was
Mhm.
not because we wanted to give, listen, I got 8 million
Yeah,
teachers in my family. I'm going to get my head chopped off if I say anything here. But it wasn't to give teachers a break, okay? It
right,
wasn't to
right.
give students a break. It was to help with the harvesting
Yeah,
while we were
exactly.
still mostly an agricultural society. So
Yeah.
these breaks are they're spun today as rest and relaxation, but man, I mean, how much of the education that the student finished up in May or June is gone by August or September?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's definitely something called the summer slide. You know, a lot of what they learned, they forget by the time the next school year comes around. And we as teachers like had to spend a lot of time reviewing. It almost feels like the first quarter is like review. So, and
Mm.
especially after COVID, because there were just so many missing pieces that they just didn't get. But yeah, so that's
Yeah, and
definitely,
the tutoring during the summer can help offset that, right? It doesn't need to be
yeah,
every day. The kid doesn't need to be
exactly.
behind the computer or at the kitchen table every day, but just keeping that consistency throughout the summer on some level can make a huge difference.
Exactly. Yeah. And I try to make my tutoring sessions fun, especially during the summer. Like that's my goal, is to make it fun for the kids so they don't feel like it's some sort of chore that they have to do, but it's something that they look forward to. So I incorporate like a lot of games and like little prizes and things like that.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Good. So, Olivia, full disclosure, folks, Olivia is married to one of my colleagues, Seth
Yes.
Connell, who is also a financial coach. So, Olivia is one of my friends, however. But Olivia has a little bit of experience with the financial coaching world. However, she may have still made some of her own mistakes. So, Olivia, what is the dumbest thing you've ever done with money?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I, before we did the whole debt-free thing, we definitely took out student loans for our undergrad degrees. And so, you know, we really, when we were working to pay off our student loans and things like that, and we had taken out a car loan as well, after we had made those mistakes, we really felt passionate about not going back into debt after we had gotten out of debt. So thankfully, we were able to send my husband to law school. He went through law school and we didn't take out any student loans. So that was just something that we were really passionate about doing, making sure that we didn't go back into debt after making the mistake of going into debt in the first place and getting out of it.
Yes. I mean, how amazing is that, guys? They are finishing up law school with no debt. I mean, that's just fantastic. Good for you guys. So let's go back to the mistake you did make, though, because you guys took out student loans for undergrad. So what did you guys go to undergrad for?
Yeah, so I ended up studying elementary education. I had changed my major from psychology to elementary education. Yep. And my husband studied government. So we actually met at Regent University. So I won't say that I regret going, because then I wouldn't have met my husband. But, you know, taking out student loans and you have to pay them back. I was actually fortunate enough. My dad actually paid off my student loans that I had left
Oh,
over. So
nice.
I was
Yeah.
really blessed with that. But I know
Yeah.
not everybody like is that lucky. So, and
Right.
yeah.
What was the stress of leading up to graduation, though, before you knew that that was going to happen, and knowing that you were going to enter the workforce with this pile of money that you owed?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, especially when my husband and I got married, like we were kind of, we had this student loan debt, and it is kind of stressful going into it. And, you know, you don't really think about it, honestly. Like, I don't know. I just really was not as maybe afraid of student loans as I should have been, because, you know, we really, like, it's so normal. It's so normalized. And then, you know, once you are out on your own and you're like a newly married couple and just trying to learn how to pay bills and things like that. Like, it is stressful, and it can be extremely stressful because, when you're first starting out, you don't have much. And then all of a sudden you have these loan payments, like as soon as you get out of college. So yeah, it can be extremely stressful.
Yeah, I think we're actually, unfortunately, doing people a disservice right now, because again, as we record this, federal student loans are still not due because of the COVID pandemic. And unfortunately, I think we've taught a generation of people who graduated in 2020, 2021, December of 2021, whatever you want to call it. We've taught these people to not have to pay it. And now the economy seems to be sliding into a recession. And if we slide into a recession and the payments get turned back on, what do you think about that? You weren't in that situation, right? I wasn't in that situation when I graduated. Right. We had to start paying them. And by the way, I don't think I had, and you're younger than I am, but I don't think I had that like 6-month grace period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I work with people today who are finishing up school or decided to take time off, and now there's a 6-month. I don't recall having that. I remember getting my little passbook, by the way, when you couldn't pay student loans online.
Yeah.
It looked like a checkbook, and you pulled a piece of paper out and you wrote out you pulled the thing out and you wrote your check and you mailed it in. That's how I paid my student loans. I'm a million years old. But I don't think I had that grace period. So I think we're doing kids today, graduating students, a disservice by having that grace period and by now pushing off the student loans from COVID. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's like, there's that, it builds up, the student loans. And then like the longer that you put it off, the longer that you're in debt. So yeah.
Right. And the other side of the coin would be, if the economy was still flourishing, would be people have what they call lifestyle creep. So they start making more money, or they start making money, period, right? Then they start making more money, and instead of saving that money, they use it towards enhancing their lifestyle. How did that affect you guys when all of a sudden you woke up one morning and said, we're going to pay for law school?
Yeah, exactly. So our lifestyle, I would say, is definitely like, we've made a lot of sacrifices. Like we buy our groceries at Aldi. We're not going to Whole Foods. Like I shop at Walmart. Like I buy my purses at Walmart. Like I am not like out there trying to buy Gucci. Like, our lifestyle is definitely pretty sacrificial, but to me, it's worth it to have the financial freedom, like to do what I love and start a business and things like that. So to me, like that is more important to me than like going out there and spending tons of money on like the best organic food and, getting designer brand clothes and stuff like that. Although I do love all that stuff. I love aesthetics and stuff like that. But it's more important to me to know that like I have the financial freedom to be able to run my own business and do the things that I really care about. And, God is taking care of us, honestly. So we're just really, really lucky.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think it's a reward for the sacrifices you guys did make when you decided to have your husband go through law school debt-free, for sure. What would you say to somebody who is sitting here watching this? We've had a bunch of people on Facebook and YouTube tune in already today. What would you say to those people who are like, this chick is crazy. You cannot pay for law school in cash?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many scholarships out there. You really you kind of have to make it a job to go out there and look for scholarships. So like setting aside a good chunk of your time and like setting up a routine where you go out on the internet and just look for scholarships, because they're definitely out there. And yes, it's time consuming, but you're going to save so much money. Like, time is money, but at the same time, the amount of time that you spend looking for scholarships, you will get that reward when you get the scholarships and you're saving so much. And so definitely coming out of law school, I know that my husband's like classmates from law school, they're suddenly getting hit with studying for the bar exam and then having these student loan payments. And some of them lived off of the student loans. So now that they're out, it's like, very stressful because they can't quite work full time while studying for the bar and all of these things. So there's just a lot of financial stress.
Yeah, definitely. That is so stressful. The just the idea of trying to study for that test and having
Mhm.
anything else going on. Forget about trying to find a job or a paid internship or whatever they can even do with their time at that point. It's so stressful. To go back to the scholarship thing, if you spend
Mhm.
an hour looking for a scholarship and you get $1,000 scholarship, you've just made $1,000 in an hour, have you not?
Yeah, exactly. So it pays off.
Yeah, definitely. How many scholarships do you think Seth got?
Okay, so he got, I would say probably like 5, and that's just my guess. To be honest with you, I don't know, but like 2 of them were pretty significant scholarships, and
Right.
he did it by writing essays. Like that's just something that he loves doing is writing anyway. So it worked out because he got to write and he got some money for it. So
Yeah, but not every scholarship requires that, right? Because not
exactly,
we're not just talking about somebody going to law school, right? We're talking about somebody going to any level of college debt free,
exactly.
and so you can be Italian American and
Hmm.
just put in your information and say, hey, here's the record of my great grandfather coming off the boat from Italy, and that qualifies you for that scholarship, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily need to be
exactly.
a 6-page essay.
Right. And there's so many weird scholarships out there for like random things. Like, I don't know. I don't know for sure because it's been a few years since I was like applying for scholarships, but there's probably like scholarships for tall people at this point. Like, I don't know. Like, so many things that people
Right.
just have created scholarships for. You just have to find them.
And sometimes, and I know this personally because my family has a scholarship on behalf of my uncle who's passed away, and a very dear friend of mine passed away a couple of years ago, and his family created a scholarship. My friend was huge into the theater program.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's for graduating high school students who
Hmm.
were participating in the music or the theater program at that high school. The high school he went to is humongous.
Wow.
So you don't necessarily, it's not like a foretold deal where you're going to get this scholarship if you happen to be on stage for one production out of the 4 years you were at this high school. But I that's just because that's what his love was. And so the moral of the story is these random, not necessarily academic scholarships are
Right.
out there. They're based on the person who the scholarship is named for,
Hmm.
the field that the person who the scholarship is in their name was in, what their background was. You don't need to write. I think that's the fear that everybody thinks is when they think of scholarships, they think of one, I have to have a 4.0 or higher GPA,
Yeah.
right, in high school. And not a lot of us are running around like that.
Right.
Or you need to write a 15-page essay, and just putting in the time could give, I mean, $1,000 scholarship, that's your books
Yeah,
for a
exactly.
semester.
Absolutely. So it's definitely worth it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you guys could do it all again, what would you do differently? Would you personally go back and go to your undergrad debt free, or what would you change?
Yeah, I think that I definitely would. I would definitely go back and try to do it debt free. Having a job in college is something that not everybody does, but it's something that, a lot of my friends did work their way through college and they were able to do it. So that's definitely an option. I probably would have gone back and done that way. Um, but yeah, and I mean, there's been so many other like little mistakes that I've made with money too that I would probably go back and redo as well. Like, for example, I joined like an MLM, and thankfully, it was not a big like financial commitment to get into this particular one. So that was good. And I got a lot of discounts on the products. But if I were to go back in time, I probably would not have done that. And so, yeah, some things like
Right.
that I probably would have done differently. And yeah, and one lesson I've learned recently with my so we have been going to Aldi primarily to get our groceries recently
Yeah.
because of inflation and everything like that. And Aldi has like this aisle with all of this like random miscellaneous stuff.
Yes.
And oh my goodness, they have like all these random cute things that I really don't need. But like every time I go to get groceries, it was like a period of time where like every time I was going to get groceries, I would go through that aisle and get like all these random things that I really just honestly did not need. It was not on my list. And I probably spent the same amount on groceries as if I had gone to like Whole Foods or something like that, because I was just buying all of these random things I didn't need.
So I blame COVID on the rise of that Aldi aisle. So I was an Aldi shopper prior to COVID when I was still in California. And Olivia and I live down the street from each other, but we actually go to two different Aldis. We've had this conversation before. I go to the one further south, she goes to the one north of me. So but that aisle, I think, at the very, very, very beginning, like we've got to think back to like February, March 2020, when we were all being told 2 weeks to slow the spread, right?
Yeah.
So if we had a habit of like popping into thrift stores or Home Goods or Marshalls, those were most likely closed during those 2 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on where you were, even longer. But Aldi was a grocery store. So it was open.
Exactly. That's so true. And like when I was teaching and I was very busy, like I did not go shopping really, because it's just like I didn't have time. Like I was spending my weekends lesson planning and things like that. I had literally no time freedom to like go shopping, which is something that I enjoy, like I was saving money by not going shopping. But at the same time, I felt like when I went to the grocery store, I was like, oh, well, I'm working so hard. I deserve it. You know what I mean? So I like made these excuses in my head for myself. Like, I'm working so hard. I don't go shopping. So like, let me treat myself. But like those little things really added up. So that was definitely a lesson I learned.
I have definitely, even now I walk through that aisle and I'll put something in my cart and then I'll keep going around to like the cold foods aisle, because that's the way that my Aldi is laid out. And then I'll be like, what am I doing? I don't need this. And I have to go back and put it back in the aisle because I'll feel guilty if I just leave it with the eggs or something.
I know. Yes, I still do. And it's so funny because like sometimes, like for a while there, I had to like send Seth to the store because I was like, look, I know I'm going to end up spending more than we need. So I was like, you should probably go just so we can like stay on our list this week.
Right. So I have the opposite problem. I can't send my husband because he'll go to that aisle and he'll be like, oh, I think she probably needs this.
Yeah.
Like, and he's doing it because he like wants to be nice, but it's like,
oh, that's so sweet.
I know. I'm like, babe, we don't need a charcuterie board. Like we have a plate. Like
yeah, that is so relatable. I know. I'm the free spirit though, so I'm always the one who like I get very distracted when I'm shopping.
We are both my husband would be considered, if we were looking at that chart, my husband would be considered the free spirit spender and I'd be considered the nerd spender. But if you notice, we're both spenders, and that's a problem. So we have to like keep each other in check because we know that we're both spenders. Before we wrap up, you used a phrase when you were talking about while you were teaching full time. And listen, teaching people, I have 8 million teachers in my family and we make fun of them all the time because they're off for the summer. But the work comes home with you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You have to grade the papers. You have to do the lesson planning. And then all of a sudden you find out the principal's going to be in the room in 2 weeks because they were supposed to be in somebody else's room, but that person's not going to be here. So now they're going to be in your room 2 weeks earlier than you anticipated. And there's always something going on. So you use the phrase time freedom. And I think the moral of this story is that when you have no debt, when you make the sacrifices and you can pay for something like law school, you have time freedom now because you guys have made the smart financial decisions.
Absolutely. And that's so freeing because like I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, honestly, when I was teaching, and like it really affected my mental health. And that was part of the reason why I left teaching, because it's just like, it's not a great way to live, like all stressed out like that, because you're lucky if you get 2 weeks notice that you're having an observation. And just, I was spending all of my time lesson planning, all of my time grading, and it just wasn't a healthy, well-balanced life, honestly. Yeah. And so like the sacrifices that I've had to make financially to do that, honestly, it was worth it. And I feel like I'm helping more kids this way by having a tutoring business than I was being a teacher, because there were so many just like the way that they were having us do things, especially after COVID, because, for example, I'll give you an example. I was teaching second grade. And because of COVID, like these second graders really did not know how to read, unfortunately, like the majority of them, which when you're in second grade, you're expected to be able to read your tests and things like that. And so the school system was like, you can't read the tests for them. And so they're taking these reading tests that they can't read. They don't know what the questions say. So they're failing them. And we're having to move on with the curriculum really quickly. And we're just going on to the next thing. And they haven't learned all of these foundational basics that they need to know how to read. So yeah, I really feel like I'm able to really help students more in my tutoring business than I was able to as a classroom teacher.
Yeah, definitely. It's just other moral of the story. Read to your kids, folks. Well, if you guys do want to find Olivia, you can find her on Facebook at Tutoring by Olivia 757 or at her website, tutoringbyolivia.wordpress.com, and all subjects, 1st through 5th grade, right?
Yes, all subjects.
Awesome.
So not just reading, math, social studies, science. Yeah.
Yes. This has been a great opportunity for people to get to know you, Olivia, and to hear your story and Seth's story, whether he likes it or not. He's lucky I didn't level any blows during this interview. I was just trying to be nice. But anyway, so again, guys, please check out Olivia's page. It's so important these days. I mean, just the magnification of importance on tutoring kids during the summer, during the school year. It's by 100 at this point because of what we've been through over the last 2 years. So thank you for what you're doing, Olivia. And thank you for your vulnerability and sharing the lessons learned from the dumbest thing you've ever done with money. I saw a bunch of people jump in on Facebook and YouTube. So to catch the replay, make sure you go to the YouTube channel, Grace Financial Coaching. And again, Olivia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Bye-bye.